The term synthwave can reference a lot of things. It can refer to a music subgenre, an art aesthetic, a fashion style, or a combination of all those things. I want to share with you how it lets you travel beyond this time, beyond this space, and beyond this universe. It's no secret, especially to those that are listening, that I am a big fan of science fiction. Whether that be books, television shows, cartoons, movies, or just the idea and theme of it as a whole. In fact, the name of this podcast, Farcast, is named after a device structure in the Hyperion Cantos books, which I've talked about previously. In the books, a Farcaster is a type of portal that allows humans to traverse between planets or locations on the same planet seamlessly and instantly. Anyways, yes, I love science fiction, and one of my favorite things is just the aesthetic of science fiction. My favorite books to read are science fiction, and I especially love books and series from the 80s and 90s. Although I wasn't born until 1996, so I didn't experience those decades firsthand, there are many important aspects of that time that led to a unique kind of science fiction aesthetic that we have today, and that I love today. Going back to science fiction books written in that time period, those are my favorite books to read. I love that the technology that they had in the 80s and 90s and earlier as well, like some of these books were written in the 60s, are just coming into bloom, and they love to write about the future, obviously, because that's what a lot of science fiction, that's the setting of a lot of science fiction. And I like to see what they think that technology will become. So like computers, especially like in the 60s, growing up, I didn't grow up in the 60s, but just as they evolved in technology, what, people thought computers would become, the internet as well, as that started to come into effect in like the late 80s and 90s, to see like how that would look in the future in the mind of someone from the 80s and 90s, and also just like AI, which is, a combination of like the internet and computers, and how baby AI was back then to, what they expect it to be in the future, which is like, in some cases, like its own race, a race of beings. The internet of the future often leads to an intangible realm of instantly accessed knowledge, news, and communication just in general. Computers are usually the forerunners of fast-paced computation, able to control, store, and access data across systems. And computers and internet also lead directly to AI, like I mentioned, and that was a hot topic in the 80s and 90s, especially with it being as baby form as it was. Mainstream examples of this are the Y2K movement, the Terminator, Blade Runner, and 2001: A Space Odyssey, with Blade Runner and 2001 both being books by Philip K. Dick and Arthur C. Clarke, respectively. The innovative and versatile synth machines created by the brilliant minds of synth composers such as Delia Derbyshire in the 1960s were in common use in mainstream music by popular bands like Styx. Fans of the enchanting electric sound could even buy their own home machines and create tunes of their own. With many movies of the area being produced and set in Los Angeles, California, the city itself gained a sort of 80s synth aesthetic of its own. This aesthetic is often recreated and expanded upon in its own way by aspiring artists today. Artists like Kavinsky, who created the song Night Call, featured in the 2011 movie Drive, starring Ryan Gosling, is a pretty great example. Although the movie is set in modern day, or at the time, 2011, in LA, it still features a heavily inspired synth soundtrack. that gives the movie an 80s LA synth vibe. It's kind of hard to describe with words, so I highly recommend listening to the song yourself and watching the movie Drive, and you'll get what I'm trying to say about the whole vibe thing. Another landmark example that is definitely worth noting is the movie Blade Runner that I mentioned earlier. It was released in 1982, but it's based on a 1968 novel called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And it's a fantastic movie set in 2019 Los Angeles, which of course is a very different LA from what we know it to have been in 2019, and even 4 years later, still very different. Aside from the great atmosphere, the great acting by Harrison Ford, among others, and the storytelling, the soundtrack is unforgettable. An artist by the name of Vangelis created the original soundtrack using synth as well as other instruments. In my opinion, he and this soundtrack were not appreciated enough in its time, but his music still gained a cult following. His soundtrack also inspired many others to create music of their own, and in the electronic music community, he is also looked back upon for creating one of the greatest soundtracks of all time for Blade Runner. Without his music, the movie would not be the same. It really sets the tone and feel for the city and the events that occur. The LA that exists in Blade Runner is dystopian. It's dirty, it's rainy, filled with crime and homelessness. But Vangelis is able to create a beautiful sound that turns these negatively perceived themes on their heads, presenting a new side to them, such as melancholy, sympathy, love, and survival against odds. When the sequel came out, Blade Runner 2049, in 2017, unfortunately, Vangelis wasn't able to take up the reins to do another original score for the movie. However, two other huge figureheads of the industry stepped up: Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfisch. These two were able to equally create a perfectly fitting soundtrack for the new movie, having similar vibes but with the added twists based on the added settings and stories present in 2049, the new movie. You are definitely doing yourself a disservice if you haven't checked out both of the Blade Runner movies and adding their soundtracks to your playlists. Returning to today's time, there's a lot of new synth music being made, not necessarily for soundtracks for movies, but more for listening pleasure of those who love the genre themselves, or the genre itself. Although flying under the mainstream radar since the early 2010s, some songs have gained internet fame for their catchy beats and aesthetic and nostalgic feelings. Other than Night Call by Kavinsky that I mentioned earlier, I would say the most popular synthwave song to come out recently is Resonance by Home. It came out in 2014 and gained popularity due to commonly being used in compilation edits on YouTube and Vine. Since then, it has also been remixed countless times, and Home has cemented his place in the synthwave archives as a trendsetter. Currently, the original Resonance song has over 220 million plays on Spotify, with 100 million more on YouTube. And that's not including the hundreds of millions of views and listens that mashups and remixes have across listening platforms. In fact, this song got me into the genre back in 2014 or 15. The popular artist The Weeknd also seems to be a fan of the genre. His 2020 album After Hours has a similar synthwave style to much of the songs on the album. From the album, the global hit Blinding Lights has over 3.8 billion plays on Spotify, and The Weeknd himself is the number one most listened to artist on all of Spotify. While he, of course, has lyrics in his music, most synthwave artists do not, and just let the music speak for itself. Some of my favorite artists personally are Allison, Four Hill, Hotel Pools, Hello Meteor, Emil Rotmare, and VOJ. That last artist, VOJ, has a popular song right now, actually, that is being heavily used on TikTok a lot for edits and other things. And that song is called Memory Reboot, which you might recognize if you look it up, and you'll probably recognize it if you're a common doom scroller like myself. These artists, their songs, and this genre always appear in my Spotify Wrapped at the end of each year. If you're not familiar with what that is, Spotify has a personalized year in review type feature at the end of each year that gives each listener a look into their listening habits for that year, such as top 5 songs played, top 5 artists, top genres, top albums, that sort of thing. Last year, for 2022, my top song was Pink Cloud Days by Allison, and Allison was my number 2 most listened to artist. Because a vast majority of this genre are without lyrics, I like to put this music on in the background while I'm doing other things, such as reading, writing, doing homework, or playing video games. Sometimes I'll also listen to it while driving if I don't feel like singing along, because that's what I do when I'm driving, like many people, I hope. I love to listen to this genre while flying on an airplane as well. I like to get lost in the movement of the music while just staring out the window and watching the ground below me or the clouds and the beautiful sky and the colors and everything. I also love to listen to this kind of music while reading science fiction books, as I mentioned earlier. It may be kind of geeky to say that I have some very fond memories of listening to some of these songs while reading the Hyperion Cantos books that I have mentioned earlier. The songs, although made in the 2010s, 2020s for the most part, they have that 80s synth science fiction feel that I mentioned, which I think greatly enhances the experience of said science fiction books, especially the science fiction books like Hyperion that are written in the 80s and 90s, such as Hyperion. I remember a specific part of the 3rd book of Hyperion, The Rise of Endymion, where the main character, Endymion, had just gone through a Farcaster that was attached to a river, so he was riding in a kayak, and on the other end of the Farcaster was just sky. So he's in a kayak, he's just falling through the air, but he's not too worried because, if I remember correctly, he knows what this planet is, and it has a massive atmosphere and not really ground, so he's not really panicking about hitting the ground. Instead, he's just enjoying the view of the sky, and the author, Dan Simmons, does a fantastic job at really painting with words about what this sky looks like and the beautiful cloud formations and the beautiful colors of the sun reflecting on the clouds. And he also encounters these floating jellyfish creatures that he interacts with peacefully. And while reading that specific part of the book, I was listening to Pink Cloud Days by Allison. And now whenever I listen to that song again, I always think back on that scene in the book, and it just gives me nostalgia and reminds me of the imagery that Dan Simmons created with words in that book about the sky and the floating jellyfish creatures. It's a peaceful song, and that really brings to life the peaceful descent that Endymion had and his time spent on that planet. I really also enjoy the art style of synthwave. Many of the album and music artwork used by these artists also use this art style for their album artwork and stuff. If you Google image search the word synthwave, you will see exactly what I'm talking about, and you'll probably recognize it, like you've seen it somewhere. Other names exist for this style, such as vaporwave or chillwave, stuff like that. There's a number of different like subgenre types for both music and art and whatnot. But I personally like to use synthwave, although some will tell you that there's differences in each one, which I'm sure there are. But I like to use synthwave because I think the synth part is extremely important part of the aesthetic because of the instrument itself and how heavily it's used in the music. So I don't like leaving that part out. The style of art is also present on the cover of books that I read, the science fiction books from like the 80s and 90s and earlier. I love that like the 80s science fiction style of art, even like the 80s like fantasy book style, like book covers, I think are really cool. And translating that into science fiction, I think makes it like 10 times better. And that also like puts imagery into what they think technology and whatever will be like in the future. And I just really like that. I find that really interesting. The Hyperion Cantos has this type of imagery on the covers, and another one of my favorite science fiction books, it's a series called The Zones of Thought. And to me, with that art, with the books, and with the music, all those things fit together. They just all go together so well, and I like to experience them all together. If this sounds like your kind of vibe, I highly encourage you to check out some of the books and movies and songs and artists that I talked about. Because songs are typically shorter than books and movies, maybe you can start there. I'll give you some recommendations for songs that you can check out if you like the style. And these are very easy listening songs, nothing like crazy, fast-paced, bassy, or hard. I don't like that kind of stuff because, like I said, I listen to this stuff while I'm like reading and doing homework and whatnot. So they don't have lyrics to distract you, and the music itself doesn't distract you because of how how it's not so like disruptive. So Memory Reboot by VOJ and Narvent. Like I said earlier, you might already know this song if you use TikTok a lot, but I just think it's a great example of this genre, and its beats and bass line of the song are very catchy, and that's one of the reasons why it's so popular. Diamond Dust by Electronic Gems and Dav Z. The start of this song is very spacey sounding, like you're floating through zero gravity on a space station or spaceship, and then it gets into the beat and you start like pushing buttons and traveling across the stars, Detroit by Disaster Piece. This song is actually part of a soundtrack for a movie called It Follows. And this movie isn't really science fiction, it's more supernatural horror. But the soundtrack is entirely synthwave for this movie, and it's amazing. But it's a special kind of synthwave because it's also like spooky, and you'll understand what I mean if you just listen to it. Like that whole soundtrack is like perfect for Halloween type like during that season because it'll spook you. And the movie too. The movie's pretty scary, but it's a really good movie as well. And it's set in like a small town, like Midwestern autumn, like setting. So that adds to the feeling. Orion by Crystal Cola. This song is by a Japanese artist, so the name will appear in Japanese characters on some listening platforms. It's a short song, but it has a very like nostalgic feeling to it. A lot of Crystal Cola's songs do actually. And because it's Japanese, it kind of falls under the city pop genre, which is another like subgenre that incorporates like Japanese 80s style, and it gives the vibe of like being in Tokyo downtown in the 80s and like like 80s Japanese pop music is playing. And that's also another very good genre, and it's fun to listen to. And Orion by Crystal Cola has a lower paced feel than that of city pop, and it's also kind of like melancholic, but it's good for a short song. Aurorian by Nielser. This is a personal favorite song of mine, and I expect it to be in my top 5 songs this year in my Spotify Wrapped. It's just nice, calming, and thought-provoking. The Alien by Ben Salisbury and Jeff Barrow. This is another song from a soundtrack. This time it's from the movie Annihilation from 2014. The movie is based on a book by the same title by Jeff Vandermeer. I absolutely love the book Annihilation and the 2 other books that are part of the trilogy. They're crazy books. I think Jeff Vandermeer is just known for his types of stories, and he's a prominent figure in the weird genre. It's like a subgenre of books, I guess, where just anything can happen, and it's also got like a science fiction, fantasy, and horror elements to it, as the movie does as well. And I don't think the movie really did the books justice, to be honest, but the soundtrack is very good. And this song in particular, even though it's very long, well, not very long, it's probably I think it's 9 minutes, something like that. It's still a really good song, and it's also creepy. It's also a little scary. And you might also recognize it because maybe you saw the movie. I know that song was also used in the trailers for the movie, and that song is also used on TikTok sometimes as it's used for spooky edits. That's how spooky it is and how popular it is. But yeah, it's a very good song, and it's a very good soundtrack. Memories of Green by Vangelis. Like I mentioned, Memories of Green by Vangelis from the Blade Runner soundtrack, like I mentioned earlier, Vangelis. This is a very slow song, but it's very melancholic. But it's a beautiful song, and you can feel it even if you haven't seen the movie. And this isn't what the movie's about, but it kind of feels like you're just floating through the darkness of lifeless space, and you're just reminiscing about the green beauty of the earth that you left behind. And then Without by Unfound. This song is just good. Nothing else to say. You should check it out. It's got a good feel, just like the rest of these. You can find all these songs on YouTube or probably any other listening platform. I personally use Spotify, so I know you can find them there. Specifically, you can find them all on a playlist that I made, and it's a public playlist, so anyone can follow it or download it. It's called I Don't Want to Live on This Planet Anymore, which is an iconic quote from one of my favorite shows, Futurama, another science fiction show. I add to the playlist pretty often, and it currently has over 260 songs on it. So, shameless self-plug, but I don't really gain anything from it. I don't gain anything from anyone following it. Just the satisfaction of spreading the love of something that I enjoy. So, if you have Spotify, give it a listen, look it up, and you won't regret it. Since I can't really play any of that music because I don't want to infringe on any copyrights, I can only suggest you to check this stuff out if you want and if you are interested. But other than that, yeah, I like synthwave, one of my favorite genres, and I think anyone can like it.